Welcome to Alien Whisper, where sizzling hot alien women and emotional sci-fi alien stories await you. If you enjoy thrilling adventures between humans and extraterrestrial beings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below the video. Now, let's dive into the story. The hangar bay was a cavern of metal and machinery, the air thick with the scent of oil and ozone. Neve stood at the center, arms crossed, watching as the unregistered pod docked with a clang that echoed through the space. He adjusted his uniform, a habit when he was about to meet someone new, though he couldn't explain why this time felt different. It was day 2 of his cover shift on the refueling ship, a floating gas station in the middle of nowhere, catering to the needs of passing vessels. The job was routine, the days were long, and the coffee was always bitter. But today something felt off. Unregistered vessel approaching. Juno's voice crackled over the comm, her tone as sharp as her console-tapping fingers. Looks like junk. Definitely non-corp. Neve smirked, sipping his synth coffee. That a plea for help? Or are you just trying to spice up my morning? Juno didn't look up from her screen. On screen, a lone pod. Not hostile, not broken, just tired. Neve leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at the monitor. There was a small, battered vessel, barely holding together. And inside, a figure. He couldn't make out much, but there was something about it that caught his attention. "Sir, it's definitely female," Juno added, her voice tinged with curiosity. Neve set his cup down, a grin spreading across his face. "Normally, this is corporate only, but I'm a sucker for exceptions." He stood up, straightening his uniform. "I'll handle this one personally." As he made his way to the hangar bay, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was going to be anything but ordinary. The hatch of the pod hissed open, and out stepped a figure that made him stop in his tracks. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin was a rich violet, glowing softly under the harsh hangar lights. Her hair, a cascade of copper-red curls, tumbled down her back in thick spirals, bouncing with every cautious step. Her eyes, wide, luminous, and full of uncertainty, met his, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "I am low on energy source," she said, her voice a melody that sent shivers down his spine. "May I exchange for refuel?" Neve swallowed, tried to regain his composure. He had dealt with many species in his travels, but none had ever affected him like this. "Normally, this is corporate only," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "But I'm a sucker for exceptions, especially when they're as intriguing as you." She tilted her head, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "I do not understand sucker, but I am grateful for your assistance." He chuckled, stepping closer. "Let's get you refueled, and maybe, while we're at it, you can tell me your name." "Nola," she said, her gaze never leaving his. "I am Nola." "Neve," he introduced himself, extending a hand. She looked at it curiously before placing her hand in his. Her skin was warm, almost electric, and he felt a jolt at the contact. "Nice to meet you, Nola," he said, his voice low. "Welcome aboard." Neve couldn't stop glancing at Nola as they walked through the ship's corridors, her violet skin catching the dim glow of the overhead lights. She moved with a quiet grace, her copper-red curls bouncing slightly, and every so often, her luminous eyes darted to him, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Her small ship was hooked up to the refueling system. Neve had punched in a free refill, paperwork be damned, and now he was giving her the grand tour. "So, this is the mess hall," he said, gesturing to a room with metal tables and a humming food replicator, "where we eat, talk, and pretend the nutrient paste tastes good." Nola tilted her head, her brow furrowing. "Paste? My people consume crystal essences. They resonate with our energy." Neve raised an eyebrow. "Crystals, huh? Sounds fancy. What's your people, anyway?" She hesitated, her fingers brushing the strap of her sleek, teal-accented suit. "I am Vorin. We live in the Nebula Veil, hidden from others. My kind we do not interact. Curiosity is forbidden." "Forbidden?" Neve leaned against the table, intrigued. "So, you got kicked out for asking questions?" Her eyes flickered, a faint glow pulsing in her skin, a sign, he'd later learn, of strong emotion. "Yes, I asked why we could not connect with other species. Why we could not bond. He grinned. Bond, huh? Well, you're in the right place. Humans are all about bonding. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. I wish to learn these customs. Food, rest, and, she paused, her voice softening. What you call closeness. Niamh's heart skipped a beat. Closeness? Yeah, I can show you a thing or two. Over the next few hours, Nola became his shadow, trailing him through the ship with a data pad she barely used, her eyes wide with fascination. In the crew lounge, she watched Juno play a holo game, her head tilting at the flashing lights. This is entertainment? She asked. Juno snorted, tossing her controller aside. Yeah, till it crashes. You want to try purple? Nola blinked at the nickname. I'm not purple. I am violet. Close enough, Juno said, smirking. Careful, Captain. She's gonna steal your chair next. Niamh chuckled, but his eyes were on Nola, who was now poking the replicator, trying to order crystal essence. It spat out a blob of gray paste instead, and her horrified expression sent the crew into laughter. This is not resonant, she muttered, sniffing it. Welcome to human food, Niamh said, handing her a cup of hot chocolate. Try this. It's better. She sipped cautiously, her eyes lighting up. This is warm, comforting. See? We got some tricks up our sleeves. He leaned closer, catching a faint, sweet scent from her, like jasmine and starlight. It was distracting, and he wasn't the only one noticing. Yo, Captain, called Riggs, the mechanic from across the room. You gonna keep her all to yourself? Or can we get a tour guide too? Niamh shot him a look. Get your own alien, Riggs. That evening, Niamh found Nola in the observation deck, staring at the stars through a wide viewport. Her skin glowed faintly, a soft shimmer that made her look like a piece of the cosmos itself. He cleared his throat, stepping beside her. You okay? Not too overwhelmed. Your world is chaotic, she said, her voice like a soft chime. But I find it pleasing. I'm tired, though. May I rest? He scratched his neck, trying to play it cool. Guest quarters are fine, but, my cabin's quieter. If you want. She turned, her eyes searching his face. I would like that. In his cabin, the hum of the ship's systems was a steady lullaby. Niamh sat on his bunk, scrolling through reports on a data pad, when he felt the mattress shift. He looked up, and there was Nola, peeking from under his blanket, her curls spilling over the pillow like a fiery nebula. Her suit hugged her curves, leaving little to the imagination, and her glowing eyes were fixed on him. Nola, he asked, his voice catching. I am curious, she whispered, her tone both innocent and bold, about why humans share sleep, and warmth, and mating. Niamh set the pad down, his pulse racing. That's a big topic. She slid closer, her curls brushing his arm, sending a jolt through him. Would you teach me? He swallowed, trying to keep his cool. Yeah, I can teach you. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull back. She didn't. His lips brushed hers, soft and tentative, tasting that sweet, starry scent. She made a small sound, half gasp, half hum, and it nearly undid him. Her hands explored his face, his shoulders, like she was mapping a new world. Is this closeness? She asked, her breath warm against his cheek. Yeah, he murmured, his fingers grazing her waist. This is the pre-snuggle zone. Very standard. She nodded, serious as a scholar, then pressed closer, her glowing skin warm against his. This feels correct. Niamh chuckled, his voice low. You're a quick learner. They kissed again, deeper this time, her touch like a star's warmth, sparking something in him he hadn't felt in years. She was curious, responsive, her fingers tracing his chest with a scientist's precision and a lover's care. When she asked, is this where mating begins? Mid-kiss, he nearly choked on a laugh. It can be, he said, guiding her gently. But we'll take it slow. The moment stretched, a dance of exploration and connection, her violet glow pulsing faintly with every touch. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, her head resting on his chest, her curls tickling his skin. I believe I understand now, she said softly. It is not just warmth. It is trust. Niamh brushed a curl from her face, smiling. You're getting it, Nola. And you're sticking around, right? She looked up, her eyes soft. I like it here. With you. He pulled her closer, ignoring the reports blinking on his pad. For the first time in a long time, the ship didn't feel so empty. The ship's command deck buzzed with tension, the crew's usual banter replaced by sharp whispers. Niev stood at the central console, his jaw tight, as the corporate inspectors shuttle docked. The guy, a suit named Kessler, was all sharp edges, pressed uniform, cold eyes, and a tablet that probably cost more than the ship's fuel core. He was here to audit the logs, and Nola's unregistered presence was a glaring red flag. Captain, you've got an undocumented passenger, Kessler said, his voice like a blade. He tapped his tablet, pulling up Nola's docking record. Care to explain? Niev leaned back, forcing a grin. She's a guest. Stranded traveler. We're just being neighborly. Kessler's eyes narrowed. This isn't a charity, acting captain. I'll need her full profile. Now. Nola stood quietly behind Niev, her violet skin glowing faintly under the deck lights, her copper-red curls pulled back in a tight braid. She didn't flinch, but her luminous eyes flicked to Niev, trusting him to handle it. He wanted to reach for her, to reassure her, but Kessler's stare pinned him in place. Before Niev could respond, Juno's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, we've got a problem. 3 ships, non-corp, closing fast. They're not here for fuel. Niev's stomach dropped. Pirates. He glanced at Kessler, who looked annoyed, like this was a personal inconvenience. Stay here, Niev told him, then turned to Nola. You with me? She nodded, her glow pulsing brighter. I can help. The command deck erupted into controlled chaos as the crew scrambled to their stations. Niev led Nola to the tactical console, her presence grounding him despite the rising panic. The pirate ships, sleek, patched-together raiders, opened fire, their plasma bolts grazing the hull. The ship shook hard, claxons blaring. Shields at 60%. Rigs shouted from engineering. We can't take much more. Nola's eyes widened, her head tilting like she was listening to something no one else could hear. They're coordinating, she said, her voice steady. I sense their thoughts. They plan to board from the starboard hatch. Niev stared at her. You're telepathic? Vorin trait, she said simply, her glow intensifying. I can disrupt them. Do it, he said, trusting her completely. Nola closed her eyes, her hands gripping the console. A faint hum filled the air, and her skin blazed with violet light, like a star about to ignite. The pirate ships faltered, their movements erratic, as if their pilots were suddenly confused. Juno whooped from her station. Their targeting's gone haywire. Nice work, Purple. But the pirates weren't done. One ship launched boarding pods, and Niev knew they didn't have enough crew to repel invaders. Nola, can you fight? He asked. Her eyes snapped open, fierce and determined. Vorin are strong. I will protect this ship. Niev grabbed a pulse rifle from the armory and tossed her a stun baton. They raced to the starboard hatch, where the boarding pods had latched on. The hatch blew open, and 6 pirates, grimy, armed, and snarling, poured in. Niev fired, dropping one, but Nola moved like a comet. She leaped forward, her baton a blur, striking with precision and unnatural strength. One pirate swung a blade. She caught his arm, twisting it until it snapped, her glow flaring with each move. Another charged, and she hurled him against the wall with a force that dented the metal. Niev stood frozen for a moment, rifle lowered, watching her in awe. She wasn't just beautiful, she was a damn warrior. Niev, she called, snapping him out of it. He fired again, covering her as they cleared the hatch. The remaining pirates fled, their pods detaching as the crew cheered over the comm. Panting, Niev grabbed Nola's arm, pulling her close. Her glow was fading, but her eyes burned with adrenaline. You okay? He asked, his hand lingering on her waist, the heat of her skin seeping through her suit. I am exhilarated, she said, her voice a mix of wonder and pride. She leaned into him, her curls brushing his cheek, and for a moment, the chaos faded. Juno's voice broke the spell. Captain, incoming transmission. It's Vale. She's here. Niev swore under his breath. The real captain, back early, and with Kessler still sniffing around, this was about to get messy. He led Nola back to the command deck, where Kessler was tapping his tablet, oblivious to the battle. The main screen flickered, and Captain Vale's face appeared, stern, gray-haired, and not amused. Neov, what the hell's going on? Vali snapid. Pirates? And an undocumented alien. Kessler stepped forward, smirking. I was just addressing that, Captain. This Vorin has no clearance. She's a liability. Nola tensed, her glow dimming. Neov stepped in front of her, his voice firm. She just saved this ship. Telepathic disruption, physical combat. She's no liability. She's crew. Vale raised an eyebrow. You're vouching for her? Damn right, Neov said, his hand brushing Nola's, a silent promise. She's a visitor, not a threat. No laws broken. Kessler scoffed. Corporate policy. Screw policy, Neov cut in. She stays or I walk. You want to explain that to the crew? Vale studied him, then Nola, who stood tall despite her uncertainty. Finally, she sighed. Fine. She's your responsibility, Neov, but I want a full report. And Kessler, you're done here. Kessler stormed off, muttering about regulations. Nola turned to Neov, her eyes soft. You risked your position for me. He grinned, pulling her closer, his voice low. Worth it. You're not going anywhere, Nola. She didn't smile, but her glow returned, warm and steady, as she pressed against him. I trust you, she whispered, her fingers intertwining with his. The crew cheered as Vale shuttle docked, but Neov only saw Nola, her violet light a beacon in the chaos. They'd won this fight, but he knew more battles, and more nights together, lay ahead. 3 weeks after the pirate attack, the refueling ship was back to its usual rhythm. Dock-ins, fuel-ups, and the occasional grumble about the replicator's bland pace. But for Neov, nothing felt routine anymore. Nola had become a fixture on the ship, her violet glow a constant in his days and nights. She wasn't just a guest, she was crew, and the crew loved her for it. Captain Vale had grudgingly approved Nola's stay, giving her the title of systems consultant. It was a fancy way of saying Nola was too damn useful to kick off. Her Vorin telepathic sensitivity had already saved them from a faulty sensor misreading, and her knack for rewiring circuits had Riggs, the mechanic, half in love with her. She'd fixed a flickering hollow display in the lounge, earning cheers, and when she accidentally shorted the lighting panel while optimizing it, her sheepish apology had the crew laughing for days. You're going to put me out of a job, Purple, Riggs teased one morning in the mess hall, tossing her a wrench. Nola caught it with ease, her enhanced strength making the move look effortless. I am Violet, she corrected, her tone serious but her eyes sparkling. And I do not wish to replace you. Your grease aesthetic is unique. Juno snorted into her coffee. Grease aesthetic? She's roasting you, Riggs. Neov watched from the corner, a grin tugging at his lips. Nola sat across from him, sipping hot chocolate. She declared it emotionally superior to crystal essences, and her curls bounced as she tilted her head, studying the crew's banter. She was learning fast, picking up human slang, though she still took things literally. When Juno called her a total catch, Nola had blinked and asked, Catch? Like a net? I'm not prey. The room had erupted in laughter, and Neov had to hide his chuckle behind his mug. That evening, Neov found Nola on the observation deck, her favorite spot. She stood by the viewport, her violet skin glowing softly against the starry void, her suit hugging her curves like it was designed to drive him crazy. He stepped beside her, his shoulder brushing hers, and felt that familiar jolt, like touching a live wire. You like it here, don't you? He asked, his voice low. She turned, her luminous eyes meeting his. This ship is home. Your people are chaotic but warm. Like you. He chuckled, slipping an arm around her waist. Warm, huh? You're not so bad yourself. Her glow brightened, and she leaned into him, her scent, jasmine and starlight, filling his senses. I have learned much from you, Neov. Food, games, trust, love. His heart skipped. Love's a big word. Is it incorrect? She asked, her head tilting, innocent but bold. He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her forehead. No, it's dead on. They stood there, wrapped in each other, the stars stretching out before them. Her fingers traced his arm, a quiet exploration, and he wondered how he'd ever lived without her. She wasn't just a spark in his life. She was a damn supernova. Later, in his cabin, Nola emerged from the fresher, wearing one of Niamh's spare shirts, the hem barely reaching her thighs. Her curls were damp, spilling over her shoulders, and her glow pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. She climbed onto the bunk, straddling his lap with a confidence that made his breath catch. "Captain," she said, her voice a teasing chime, "I require heat transfer." He laughed, his hands settling on her hips. "You're going to kill me with that line, Nola." She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear. "I have studied human affection. I wish to practice thoroughly." His pulse raced as he kissed her, slow and deep, her glow flaring with every touch. The shirt slipped off her shoulder, revealing that violet skin he couldn't get enough of, and he pulled her closer, the sheets tangling around them. It wasn't just heat, it was connection, trust, something bigger than both of them. The next morning, Niamh walked onto the command deck, Nola at his side, her hand brushing his like she couldn't help it. Juno smirked from her console. "You two are gross, you know that." "Jealous, Juno?" Niamh shot back, winking. Nola tilted her head. "Gross. Our closeness is hygienic." The crew burst out laughing, and even Vale, reviewing logs at the central console, cracked a smile. Niamh squeezed Nola's hand, ignoring the teasing. She fought pirates, outsmarted censors, and stolen his heart. What was a little ribbing? That night, during a rare, quiet shift, Niamh took Nola to the mess hall after hours. He'd rigged the replicator to make a decent steak, his one culinary trick, and set up a small table with a view of the nebula outside. The crew had helped, dimming the lights and tossing a candle for kicks, though Rigg swore it was for ambience. Nola sat across from him, her glow reflecting off the table, her eyes wide as she tried the steak. "This is complex," she said, chewing slowly. "Like your emotions." He grinned, reaching for her hand. "You want to talk? You've got me all tangled up, Nola." She set her fork down, her expression serious. "I was banished for asking questions. Now, I ask them freely, and you answer. I wish to stay. With you." Niamh stood, pulling her to her feet. In front of the nebula's glow, he kissed her, not caring who might walk in. The crew could tease all they wanted. She was his, and he was hers. "You're not going anywhere," he murmured against her lips. "We've got more stars to chase." As they danced slowly, her glow blending with the nebula's light, Niamh knew this was just the beginning. The ship, the crew, Nola, they were his home now. And whatever the galaxy threw at them next, they'd face it together,